Memento appears to end with Leonard losing the truth. Teddy tells him that the real attacker was killed long ago, that the revenge already happened, and that Leonard has been repeating the hunt because nothing about the victory can remain in his memory. But Leonard does not simply wait for those words to disappear. He makes a decision while he still understands them. He photographs Teddy's license plate, writes a warning on Teddy's picture, and chooses a tattoo that will transform Teddy into the next John G. This is the most important action in the film because it happens before the memory resets. Leonard knows that his future self will treat these marks as objective evidence. He cannot control what that future self remembers, but he can control what that man believes. The ending is therefore not only a tragedy about damaged memory. It is a story about a man deliberately designing the lie that will survive him. The final question is not whether Leonard can discover the truth. It is whether he still wants a truth that would end the only purpose he has left. Leonard insists that memories are unreliable. They distort rooms, alter colors, and change whenever a person retells them. His solution is a physical system. Polaroids identify people, handwritten notes define relationships, and tattoos preserve the most important conclusions. Because these objects exist outside his mind, Leonard calls them facts. Yet the film repeatedly shows that the system does not preserve reality. It preserves instructions. A photograph cannot explain why its caption was written. A tattoo cannot reveal what evidence was ignored before the needle touched the skin. Even Leonard's warning not to believe Teddy contains no argument, only a command. The future Leonard sees the command but cannot question the emotion that produced it. This gives written language enormous power. One sentence can turn a stranger into an ally, a woman into someone he should trust, or a license plate into proof of murder. Leonard believes he has replaced memory with certainty, but he has actually built a system where context is permanently erased. His notes are not safer than memory when the person writing them is frightened, manipulated, or intentionally dishonest. Natalie demonstrates the weakness of Leonard's method more clearly than anyone. She insults his wife, tells him openly that she intends to use him, and removes every pen before provoking him into violence. Leonard desperately tries to preserve what happened, but the memory disappears before he can write it down. Natalie then returns with a new story. Dot attacked her, and Leonard must protect her. Within seconds, the emotional truth of the scene has been replaced by a usable instruction. Teddy exploits the same structure on a larger scale. He supplies names, locations, police information, and targets while knowing that Leonard cannot compare today's explanation with yesterday's. The people around Leonard do not need to control his mind. They only need to reach the page before he does. This makes his condition dangerous in a specific way. Manipulation does not vanish when Leonard forgets the manipulator. It hardens into a photograph or note that may guide him for days. The written record becomes more durable than the lie that created it. Yet the film refuses to make Leonard merely passive, because he eventually uses the same mechanism on himself. Leonard tells the story of Sammy John Keys as if it were a clinical lesson. Sammy could not form new memories, failed the conditioning tests, and ultimately allowed his diabetic wife to die through repeated insulin injections. The story separates Leonard from the worst possible consequence of his condition. Sammy is the helpless patient, Leonard is the disciplined investigator who has learned to function. But Teddy claims that Leonard has moved parts of his own life into Sammy's story. According to Teddy, Leonard's wife survived the assault, she was the diabetic patient, and Leonard's repeated injections caused her death. The film visually supports the possibility by briefly replacing Sammy with Leonard inside the institution. That image does not certify every word Teddy says. It shows that Leonard's identity depends on a story whose boundaries are unstable. Sammy gives him a place to store guilt without recognizing it as his own. The phrase tattooed on Leonard's hand therefore works in two directions. Remembering Sammy helps him explain his condition to others, but it may also help him avoid remembering himself. The story is useful precisely because Leonard can repeat it without ever reaching the pain hidden beneath it. There is an obvious objection: Teddy is not trustworthy. He admits using Leonard, arranges a drug deal around the killing of Jimmy, and changes his tone whenever control begins to slip away. His explanation about Leonard's wife could contain truth, manipulation, or both. Memento never gives the audience a clean document that settles every disputed detail. That uncertainty is deliberate. The film places us inside Leonard's problem, where evidence arrives without a reliable history. But the uncertainty around Teddy does not erase what we actually watch Leonard do. Leonard considers Teddy's claims, asks whether he can let himself forget them, and then creates information designed to produce Teddy's death. Even if Teddy is lying about the first John G., Leonard does not investigate the claim. He chooses a conclusion because the conclusion is useful. This distinction matters. The film does not require us to believe that Teddy possesses the complete truth. It only requires us to recognize that Leonard knowingly corrupts his own system. The mystery of the past remains unresolved, while the moral fact of the present is placed directly on screen. Leonard describes revenge as something that matters even if he cannot remember achieving it. Yet Teddy's photograph shows the opposite. Leonard once completed the quest, felt joy, and then lost the feeling with the memory. A permanent victory is impossible because satisfaction cannot enter his system as a lasting experience. Only the investigation can survive. That is why Teddy's final accusation is so powerful. Leonard has a dead wife to mourn, a puzzle to solve, and a purpose that can renew itself forever. When the puzzle threatens to end, Leonard edits the evidence. He does not need to remember making that choice, because the point is to make the next Leonard obey it. The structure of the film mirrors this cycle. Every scene feels like an answer until the preceding scene removes its foundation. Leonard lives the same way. Every conclusion becomes the premise for another hunt. The final line, asking where he was, is not a return to innocence. It is the moment the plan begins working. Leonard Shelby is trapped by his condition, exploited by other people, and haunted by a past he may never reconstruct. But at the end of Memento, he is also the author of the trap. He chooses the lie because the truth would leave him with nothing to do next.